Imagine this. You walk into a room where everyone is talking voices, overlapping ideas, clashing egos, trying to outshine each other, and yet in the corner there is someone who says nothing, observing, listening, judging, and somehow everyone eventually turns their attention toward them, that still figure, that silent force. What if I told you that in a world obsessed with noise, the true power lies in silence today? We'll uncover how one of history's most controversial yet brilliant thinkers, Niccolo Machiavelli, saw silence not as absence, but as strength, a hidden weapon, a strategic advantage. And as we peel back the layers of thought, philosophy, and psychological insight, you'll see how silence can transform your relationships, sharpen your intelligence, and redefine the way you navigate life. Stay with me until the end, because the final reflection may very well shift how you see power, influence, and yourself. Let's begin. Machiavelli was not a man of dreams. He was a man of reality. He did not paint the world as it should be, but as it is in The Prince. Perhaps his most infamous work, Machiavelli doesn't preach kindness or fairness as necessities for leadership. Instead, he teaches perception strategy, control, and silence. Not explicitly, perhaps, but silence is woven between the lines of his philosophy. Why? Because silence allows space for observation. It allows the mind to work, uninterrupted. Machiavelli understood that the person who talks less often knows more, while others expose their thoughts, their weaknesses, their impulses. The silent individual listens. Studies in psychology reinforce this. Carl Jung believed that your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart, who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes. Silence is the gateway to this inner vision. Now think, how many times have you spoken too soon, only to regret it later? How many arguments have been fueled not by intention, but by reaction? Machiavelli would see this as foolish for him. The wise do not reveal their emotions easily. They restrain them, shape them, use them when necessary as instruments, not as confessions. The art of silence is not passive, it's deliberate, it's action, masked as inaction. Think of it like this: while you remain silent, others fill the space. They show their hand, they reveal desires, fears, ambitions, and you, by not reacting, gain the most precious resource in any strategic game: information. Modern psychological research confirms what Machiavelli seemed to intuitively understand. Behavioral scientists note that people who speak less in meetings, negotiations, or conflicts are often perceived as more authoritative, not because they dominate, but because they don't need to. Their silence speaks for them. Their restraint commands attention. But here's a question for you. Are you silent because you are afraid? Or are you silent because you are in control? There is a difference. One is suppression, the other is strategy. One weakens you, the other empowers. Machiavelli teaches that appearance often matters more than truth. If you appear calm, composed, silent, you shape how others see you, and perception in Machiavellian terms is everything he writes. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Silence helps you control that appearance. There's a reason why the most intelligent people in the room often speak last. They wait, they measure, they collect, and when they speak, their words carry weight. Not because they're louder, but because they're rare. Ask yourself, now, do you listen to understand, or do you listen to reply? That distinction may define the trajectory of your relationships, your leadership, your influence in relationships. Romantic or professional silence can be powerful when you don't immediately react, when you let others feel the weight of your pause. You create space in that space. Truths emerge, real intentions surface. You control the tempo. Think of a negotiation. The first person to speak after a question often loses power. The silence becomes tension, and tension creates leverage even spiritually. Silence has been revered in Zen Buddhism. Silence is considered the highest form of communication in Christian mysticism. Silence is where God is heard across cultures, and across centuries the loudest truths have often been found in stillness. But modern life fears silence. We fill every second with scrolling notifications, chatter. We are addicted to stimulation. We mistake volume for value. We fear being misunderstood in silence, so we over-explain, overshare, over-talk. And in doing so, we lose power. We lose presence. Machiavelli would not be surprised by this. He might even exploit it. He would see that in a world where everyone is shouting, the one who is silent becomes the mystery. And mystery is magnetic. It attracts curiosity, respect, even fear. Let me ask you again, what if your silence is not emptiness but potential? Not weakness, but strength? Can you imagine the power of simply saying nothing and letting others reveal themselves? What might you gain by mastering silence? You begin mastering yourself. You learn to observe without judgment, to respond, not react, to hold space instead of rushing to fill it. You develop what ancient Stoics called ataraxia, a state of unshakable calm. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Silence brings that control back to you internally and externally, and it is in that space of calm that transformation begins. Because silence is not only about what you withhold from others, it's about what you allow yourself to hear from within. So stay with me, because we're only getting started ahead. We'll go deeper into how silence can be weaponized for leadership negotiation, emotional mastery, and personal evolution. And in the final section, I'll share the most powerful form of silence of all, one that can dismantle manipulation, increase your influence, and unlock the next level of your personal power. But before we go further, what do you think? When was the last time your silence shifted a situation more than your words ever could share your thoughts? I want to hear your experiences, because sometimes your silence can teach others more than your words ever could have. You ever wondered why the most powerful people often say the least in politics and business, even in personal relationships? Those who hold real influence are rarely the loudest. They are the most intentional. Their words are measured. Their pauses are deliberate. Their silence is not a gap, it's a statement. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this more deeply than most. His era was marked by shifting alliances, ruthless betrayals, and endless intrigue. To survive in such a landscape, let alone thrive, required more than charm or brute force. It required intelligence, control, and the ability to say just enough, but never too much. In fact, Machiavelli warned rulers to never reveal the full extent of their intentions, saying, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception, and what is silence, if not the perfect vehicle for quiet deception." But this deception is not about harming others. It is about protecting your power, preserving your position in silence. Your next move remains hidden. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is a form of power. Think of a chess game. The player who reveals too much too early loses the advantage. Silence keeps your strategy intact. This is especially true in leadership. A silent leader is not absent. A silent leader is present deeply, consciously, strategically. When a leader listens more than they speak, they absorb the pulse of their team, the nuances of dynamics, the unsaid tensions that others miss. Research from Harvard Business Review shows that leaders who cultivate active listening, where silence is a tool of focus, build more trust, more respect, and more loyalty than those who constantly impose their voice. This concept echoes through ancient philosophy. Lao Tzu, the sage behind Taoism, wrote, "He who does not speak knows there is profound intelligence in restraint." Silence gives space for reflection, and reflection brings insight. Leaders who don't feel the need to fill every silence with directives or opinions create space for others to grow, to think, to contribute. That in turn strengthens the entire system. But let's not confuse silence with submission. This is not about being passive. It's about being precise, strategic. Silence is assertive. It creates presence, the kind of presence that says, "I don't need to prove anything, I am watching. I am aware, and when I speak it will matter." Consider negotiations. Imagine two people across a table discussing a contract. One makes an offer, the other remains silent. That pause, those few seconds of nothing, can unravel the other's confidence. Doubt creeps in. Did they offer too little, too much? Should they clarify? Should they speak again? Often that silence forces the speaker to revise their offer, giving away more simply to escape the discomfort of not being answered. This is not manipulation. This is understanding human psychology. Our brains are wired to fill in gaps to resolve uncertainty. Silence, therefore, becomes a tool of psychological leverage. You do not need to fight. You only need to wait, and in waiting you win. This concept finds echoes in the work of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and Holocaust survivor. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space he speaks of. That pause is silence, and in it, there is power beyond measure. Have you felt it, that moment when you chose not to react, not to argue, not to prove your point, and instead you waited, and in that wait, the situation shifted? Silence can diffuse tension. It can also amplify it. It can show patience. It can also signal control. But most importantly, it gives you the power to decide what comes next in emotional intelligence. This is critical. Silence helps regulate impulsive reactions. It buys you time, and in that time, you can ask yourself, is this worth responding to? What do I want to achieve? Will speaking now serve me or sabotage me too often? We speak out of habit, out of ego, out of discomfort. But Machiavelli would advise against this for him. Every move must serve a purpose, and if speaking does not serve your strategy, then silence is the better choice. Let's bring this to the personal level in our relationship. Silence is often misunderstood. We think love must be loud. That connection means constant communication. But some of the most powerful connections are built not in words, but in presence. Sitting in comfortable silence with someone is a form of intimacy, a deep knowing, a trust that doesn't need to be filled with chatter. On the other hand, silence can also be a boundary when someone disrespects you or crosses a line. Your silence can be louder than confrontation. It sends a message. I see you. I'm not engaging. I am not available for this, and that in itself is powerful. The Stoics believed in the power of silence as self-discipline. Epicurus advised, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because in silence others may underestimate you, and in that underestimation lies your freedom, your advantage. You are not performing, you are preparing. There is a freedom in not having to explain yourself, in not justifying every move, every feeling, every opinion. The more silent you become, the more you begin to trust your inner compass. You stop looking for validation, you start finding clarity. But silence is not just for self-preservation, it's also for growth in silence. You hear your own thoughts more clearly. You become aware of your mental patterns, your fears, your desires. You begin to distinguish the noise of the world from the voice within you. This is the silence. Machiavelli understood not just strategic, but existential. The silence that lets you study the world, not as you wish it to be, but as it truly is. And from that clarity, you can act, you can decide, you can lead. Ask yourself this: what would happen if you practiced one full day of strategic silence? If you observed more than you spoke? If you waited, watched, and listened before reacting? How might your environment change? How might you change? That is the power we are exploring, and we're only halfway there. In the next section, we will explore how silence can be used as a psychological shield, protecting you from manipulation, helping you navigate conflict, and establishing emotional mastery in every area of your life. And stay tuned for the final revelation in the last section, because the deepest, most transformative power of silence is still to come. But now I want to hear from you. When was silence your greatest tool? When did saying nothing say everything? Share your moment in the comments and reflect in your life. Are you using silence or being used by your need to speak? Silence is not just a tactic, it is a shield, a boundary, a fortress of the mind. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone was trying to provoke you, pushing your buttons, manipulating the narrative, twisting your words? In these moments, the instinct is to respond, to defend, to fight back. But the truth is, the moment you react emotionally, you've already lost the advantage. Machiavelli understood this implicitly. His writings were rooted in the belief that power belongs not to the loudest, but to the most controlled emotional outbursts. For him were signs of vulnerability, not strength. He believed that those who could control their expressions could control the perceptions of others, and in politics, in life, perception is often more influential than truth. Think about this when you meet someone who remains calm under pressure, who doesn't flinch in the face of aggression, who listens without revealing their own stance. Don't you instinctively respect them more, maybe even fear them a little? That's the power of silence used as psychological armor. Silence during confrontation does something strange. It creates ambiguity, and ambiguity is uncomfortable. Most people need resolution. They want reactions when they don't get them. They become destabilized. Their own insecurities come to the surface. The silence you offer becomes a mirror reflecting their own inner chaos, and that in turn gives you control in therapy and modern psychology. This is called the power of the pause. When a therapist remains silent after a patient speaks, the patient will often continue talking, revealing deeper truths they hadn't planned to share. Why? Because silence creates space, and in that space, what's hidden begins to emerge. You can use this in everyday life when someone accuses you, falsely. Pause when someone tries to bait you into anger. Pause when someone seeks your opinion, just to argue. Pause that pause. Your silence becomes your protection. It prevents escalation. It keeps your mind clear, and clarity is your greatest weapon. Emotional mastery begins with silence. The ability to delay your response, to breathe in the space between action and reaction. But what if we take this one step further? What if silence is not just a tool, but a teacher? Because when everything else falls away, your title, your voice, your opinions, what remains? Who are you in the absence of identity, performance, and expectation? This is not a rhetorical question. It is a mirror. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." And how do we reconnect with who we are? In silence, in stillness, in solitude. Not the kind of solitude that isolates, but the kind that reveals. This is the silence that transcends tactics. It does not aim to manipulate others. It exists to liberate you. Let's slow down. Think of the last time you sat with yourself, not distracted, not analyzing, not achieving, just being, not rehearsing your past, not worrying about the future, simply inhabiting the moment fully. That silence is not empty. That silence is full of truth, full of awareness, full of answers that no external voice can provide. If silence is power, then actions speak louder than words. Like, subscribe, and stay unseen, but always aware.